Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to week 6 of our Quality in Healthcare. Our class is going very, very well. I'm excited about working with you this term so far. I think a lot of your discussion posts are looking good, your assignments are looking good, and I just want to congratulate you on a job well done so far. This week, we're going to talk a little bit specifically about leadership in healthcare. Leadership is a huge, broad subject that could be covered in a class all by itself. But suffice it to say that everything rises and falls on leadership. That is, leadership influences everything. And so, one of the first things that usually comes to mind is what is leadership? And I like to define it as the art or the act of influencing other people to do something, whether they want to or not in some cases, but it's all about influence. And when you think about healthcare quality, it's very, very important that leadership drive quality and drive the patient experience and drive the idea that do not want to harm the patient, and that whole process of caring for people is done in a manner that is ethical and high quality, and hopefully gets good results, because we all go to doctors and nurses and healthcare organizations to get help with different kind of problems. Solving the problem is always a good part of the quality outcome. So leadership comes in many, many forms, and we won't get into that in great detail, I don't think, but there are a lot of leadership theories out there, like transformational theory, transactional theory, leader-member exchange. There's servant leadership, authentic leadership, and the list just goes on and on and on about the different ways leaders drive performance in organizations. So that's an interesting subject all to itself, but just to suffice it to say, we'll get into it a little bit, but not as deep as you probably could. So, but we should also understand, no matter how deep we go with it, that leadership is very, very important in ensuring quality. A lot of times they make the ultimate decision on things, or ultimate decision on how we're going to do things, and so they certainly influence quality. They set the tone, they set the culture of the organization. After we talk a little bit about leadership, we're going to talk a little bit about quality systems, I think is the name of the chapter. And you'll hear different terms like quality plans, quality assurance, quality control, quality implementations, total quality management, things like that. And all of those are terms that you ought to be familiar with. They're not overly important, but at least know what folks are talking about. Usually, quality in any organization starts with a quality plan. The quality plan kind of talks about the vision and mission of the organization and how it and its people will drive quality. It's kind of a blueprint, just like if you built a house, you would have a blueprint. The quality assurance plan is kind of the blueprint on how will the organization make sure that their product, their services, their care is high quality, and it kind of guides, if you will, all the decisions. When we talk about quality specifics, we see quality control. Quality control is kind of like, I like to call it a policing action, where quality inspectors go out and try to quote unquote catch things by doing audits, by checking the processes, checking behind people, that kind of thing. That's quality control. It's more of a early 1900s idea, even though it's still being done. It comes from Taylorism and scientific management, where each person is supposed to do a very, very small piece of the overall puzzle, and then there are armies of inspectors, managers, supervisors, and people checking on you to make sure you do it the right way. So quality control, it still goes on today, because I don't know that people can totally get away from it, but it's the idea of catching problems, if you will. Quality assurance, on the other hand, is the idea of we're going to try to build quality into what we do right off the bat, that everybody is responsible for quality, and we're going to do everything that we can do to prevent quality issues from happening in the first place. So you may still have quality inspectors or auditors or whatever, but Every nurse, every medical assistant, every pharmacy tech, every person who sweeps the floor, every doctor, everybody in quality assurance is responsible for maintaining and getting the quality to the level the organization requires. So you can kind of see that's more empowering, that's more getting everybody involved. It's more preventing than where the other one is catching. And you'll hear a lot more about quality assurance these days than you do quality control. From that, you hear a term often called total quality management. Total quality management is kind of taking all the different processes that we use to have a high quality organization and kind of tying a bow around it, if you will. It's almost like the quality plan, but it's all the things that we do to ensure quality. In this case, it may be quality assurance, it may be quality control in addition to quality assurance, it may be setting up a system of inside and outside auditors to come and check the processes. If you're talking about some organizations, you may be talking about ISO standards, the International Standards Organization, and for quality, that's ISO 9000. Where the organizations may say we're going to apply for that and we're going to try to get that because that ensures high quality. But to do that, there's a lot of auditing going on to prove that you do what you say you're going to do. So all of those things combined is called total quality management, and all of that rolls up, if you will, into the total quality plan. And it's just nice to know when somebody's throwing out all these buzzwords, what in the world are they talking about? Most of this stuff came from I'd say the late 1940s into the 1950s and 60s with Edward Deming and then Joseph Juran and some of those guys, Schuhart and so forth. Right after World War II, there was a great quality movement in manufacturing and within the world today. I'd say prior to World War II, you had Henry Ford and his mass production and scientific management from Taylor and some of those guys. And basically, people came off the farms into factories like Ford, and they were given small tasks to do, and they would do them over and over and over every day. And then you would have supervisors and managers and quality people checking and watching and making sure that they performed. And mass production worked very, very well in the early 1900s and up until World War II. You were able to make things more efficient, able to do things very fast. You could take relatively unskilled labor and train them to do one job and do it well over and over and over again. After World War II, a lot of quality issues started coming up as Japan started rebuilding, Germany started rebuilding, and some of the Americans like Juran, Schuhart, Deming, and so forth actually went to Japan and tried to help them rebuild their economies and rebuild their factories, and the quality movement began at that point. Deming came out with his famous 14 points for quality, and probably one of the most significant parts of that that changed everything is that everybody's responsible for quality. Secondly, in most cases when there's a quality failure, it's usually a system problem, not a person. Sometimes it's persons, but a lot of times we set people up to fail by saying do it this way, not that way, or this is where you got to do it, and we set people up to fail. So Deming's 14 principles became very, very popular. It helped Japan rebuild. That whole process it just really came out in companies like Toyota, where they began their lean management or their Toyota production systems, and just transformed the world in terms of quality expectations. Another thing that Deming came up with that you'll probably hear a lot about is the PDCA cycle. Let me say that again. PDCA cycle, plan, do, check, and act. And that's an integral part of continuous improvement and total quality management. And it just stands for itself. First of it, you plan what you're going to do, you do it, you check it, and then you act on it, and so forth. And your book does a pretty good job of explaining all of that. So Quality starts first of all with leadership, and then it continues on with a very, very solid quality plan, and that's the things that we'll be talking about this week. As we wrap up the video, I want to remind you that we are in week 6, so please, 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 please make sure that you're keeping up your work. Don't get behind. By week 8, I'll be telling you that I will not accept any late work per the university's standards, so please make sure you're keeping everything up. Last week we did our first Zoom conference, and it has been recorded, and the link is out in the announcements for you. Please watch that. It's an easy grade. I don't know when you've watched it, so please, once you've watched it, email me and just let me know you have, and then I'll record your grade appropriately for that. If you got any kind of questions this week, let me know. Should be some fun discussions. I'll see you in class.